The following presentation is part of the Technology and the Corporation Conference Series, sponsored by MIT's Industrial Liaison Program.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm the last speaker, and my pleasure to be here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you a little bit about the research that we have done. First of all, like a couple of topics about my lab and how we approach research and work, and in particular design thinking. And secondly, a couple of ideas about design thinking. Then I'm going to talk about millennials and a few insights that we had about the research that we are doing about millennials, and finally discussing some emerging technologies that could be relevant for us. So first of all, the MIT Mobile Experience Lab, which is going to be redefined as MIT Design Lab, and I would like to give you only couple of points why design thinking is important to us and why we think is relevant. So the first point is really always design thinking is user-centered. So what we do and what we try to do is to really understand users, but from a qualitative perspective. The amount of insights that you can get by talking to people and taking the time to talk to user is incredible. It sounds trivial, it is not. We've done a lot of work. One of the projects was to redesign a gas station. We are MIT, and we definitely love technologies. We have redesigned gas stations. So we have designed robotic pumps. We have utilized IoT and proximity technology to deliver a great experience. But the first step that my team did was actually going to talk to people. One of the researchers is actually working in Patty Maya's group. And the first time that they started to work, we say, hey guys, you need just to drive 2,000 kilometers, stop to every gas station, look and talk to people. And again, this is really fundamental to us. The second point that I want to mention is something about emotions. And if you're thinking, how people make decisions, emotional decisions are really interesting. So there is a study that has been done in Amsterdam. Basically, they compare if people are happy with decisions that they have made in their life. And basically, people who make simple decisions are more rational based. So if you need to buy a refrigerator, maybe you have a rational analytics about the cost. $50, $100 more or less is okay. But if you need to get married, you don't make a rational decision of the growth expectation of your future partner and income, or the life expectation of your partner. So this was actually an interesting conversation we had with Gianfranco Zaccai. But really, again, the point is emotional decisions are really key and relevant into user behavior. So these are only 2 points. So in a way, what we do in all our research is really applied to the design thinking to our research. So design thinking, first of all, is really problem making. It's never problem solving. So the first things that we start to do when we engage in research, we're trying to understand the situation or a context, is to challenge heavily the context. So design thinking is problem making. When you're trying to understand something, it's really about how you can expand and see how you can identify the right decision or the right question. So design thinking ultimately is never focused on object or services, but is a way to understand, is a way to identify and define problems and then deliver customized solutions. So that is really key for us. And basically, design thinking for us is a way to design relationships. So the whole point is design relationships based on people, technology, and services, and so on. So Millennial is one of the let me say, tools that we utilize to inspire, observe, understand the context, and then design, and then do research, then do projects. So we utilize thick data, qualitative subjective, thick data to inspire our project. Not that quantitative data are wrong. Actually, the synergy between the two can be very interesting, but this is what we do. So we use thick data. And why millennials? Well, you know, millennials are this population between 18 and 34 years old. By 2020, millennials will be basically 1/3 of the worldwide population. And by 2025, millennials basically will account for 75% of the working age. So it's a very important, heavy population that we need to do. Why the millennials is also because millennial expectation based on that will definitely define our own products and society. And a lot of the company created, formed, and run by millennials are really shaping the way we live. Also for the non-millennial generation, you know, from Facebook to Google to Uber, you name it. So I have 8 key points that for us can be interesting to see, understand about millennials. And I will go through each of them and will provide like one example per each. So first of all, millennials are digital native. And I'm not saying anything really new. Very interesting, I was discussing with one of my students recently, and basically we were discussing about emerging technologies and thinking basically my grandmother, she used to go outside and buy ice to put because a refrigerator didn't exist. And while we were discussing that, his daughter was talking to Alexa, ordering stuff on Amazon. So it was a very interesting paradox and paradigm. But basically, what does it mean that millennials are digital native? I would say four key issues or takeaways from that. Number one, I would say millennial need and want immediacy. So they are the on-demand generation. Product and services should be available anytime, everywhere. Secondly, 67% of millennials purchase directly from company, so bypassing agent, bypassing intermediation. It's a direct relationship with the brand, direct relationship with companies, and so on. 3, this is the generation of I'd rather text than talk. So immediate way to engage in a very different way across channels is key and relevant. And 4th, millennials basically expect somehow the same quality of services that they have in their digital experiences across segment services, etc. So if I can have a Uber by click of a button in 2 seconds, why I can't have an engagement with my municipality or with a brand or with a customer service in a so easy and seamless way. So this is for us one of the key points. The second point is purpose matter. That's key. 50+% of millennials really think that how is important to embrace and work and stay with company that they have a purpose in a way, brand with a purpose. Lemonade, if you know, is a growing, emerging insurance service that just raised 13 million or plus. But the Lemonade, basically, what is interesting is a flat-free for claims service. And the insurance, basically, they pay the leftover money to a charity organization chosen by the user, by the consumer. So by that fact, basically, you are entitled to decide to donate some amount of money to other charity organizations that you think are valuable to you. So that's a key element: transparency, immediacy, and most importantly, purpose. Number 3 is millennial cares for diversity, different, uniqueness. So basically, you care for a product with intention in a way. You care for a meaningful product in a way. locally grown food, locally grown beer, micro-testing, and so on. This is a way to escape mass consumption and access products more sustainable, ecologically sensitive, and personalized. So this is definitely a key value. Number 4, millennials are story-doers, storytellers, and story makers. Think the first things you do when you go to a restaurant. Basically, you take a picture, you add a comment, you share, etc. So the service or the product is immediately commented, is expanded. So this product is basically expanded with conversation around the product itself. So basically, consumers looked at things as a relational system rather than a product. So it's really about relationship rather than products. Each product is connected and come with a story. And the importance of participating to that story is key, is relevant. So, not only the importance of review when you buy product, but peer-to-peer conversation. So 89% of millennials basically and consumers believe that friends' comments are more important and interesting than company claims. So it's really more about the story about the product. Each product, each service comes with a story, and the ability to participate and making that story is key, even more the product itself. So that's key. That's very important. Number 5, this notion of self-sustaining prosumer. Similar to the story, either for services or products. We saw Formlabs recently. So this do-it-yourself culture, this ability to access to customize product and services is key. The cost of hardware that is diminishing and the ability to have access to not only to 3D printers, which you saw the cost is less than $3,000 for high quality 3D printer, but also CNC mills, laser cutting, and so on. So the ability again to be engaged and produce content and products is key. Number 6, this notion of forever learners is very important in designing product and services as well. So we are no longer in a linear path where you learn something and then you apply what you learn to your work, to the usage of the product that you have just bought, and so on. One of the interesting examples is the society of grown-ups. You may be familiar, but this is basically a third place created by the Mass Mutual Insurance with the idea of growing with millennials to educate them about spending, about money. So they're not just selling insurance, they're not selling financial products, but basically is a cafe, is an event place, is a place that connects people, and then you start to grow, and eventually you need to utilize financial services later on. But it's not immediately a transaction. I have a product, I need to sell the product to you, but it's more we establish first a relationship, we grow together, and when you need to access to a product, here we have a product. And eventually the notion of co-designing a product is very interesting as well. By having this community, you are able to listen and customize and tailor products in a very interesting way. 7, millennials are experience samplers. So we are definitely shifting from buying to subscription models. We're definitely shifting from transactional to conversational dynamics. So that's key. Millennials are, in a way, non-committal. You are familiar with Birchbox and subscription services that deliver package in an interesting way. One of the interesting things to mention here is how this can happen thanks to way to profile customer and user in a very interesting and unique way. utilizing artificial intelligence and way to create profile, enable subscription company to deliver customized items and products to almost an individual level. And the second point is really the transaction from conversation to conversation. That's key for us. You may be familiar with Kai, a bank bot agent. We are working actually with two companies right now. We are designing agent AI-based. We're basically, again, to state that the engagement is no longer based in a transaction, but is an ongoing conversation. And that's key. So in that case, you don't need to utilize your mobile. To know something about your bank account, you don't need to access to your mobile. Log in, open your app, log into it, browse to a menu, search for the right function, and then start to interact. You just ask, how much money I have, or wire $100 to Pierre, or whatever. So it's really a conversation that you start to have rather than point-to-point transaction. So we shift again from an interesting area, and the last point is really about sharing, the shared generation, but it's really interesting and deep what's happening. So from sharing resources like Zipcar or Airbnb, from sharing experiences like BlaBlaCar or Meetup, sharing knowledge through Wikipedia, GitHub, sharing money through Kiva, sharing economy to Kickstarters and so on. So, or sharing content, Netflix and Spotify. So there is a very interesting, very well-rooted behavior in this notion of sharing. And again, one of the key point or interesting point to consider is, the well-known case Uber is really moving from this notion to ownership into access. Access versus ownership is clear. So Uber driving or self-driving car are really about sharing and creating a very different experience. And that is key. So the focus is on the experience, and the experience is the product in a way that is sold or proposed. So you can have a ride, a Uber pitch, you can share a ride with the VC. So you book a ride and you can stay in a car with someone else and have a conversation and pitch your startup. You can order a flu shot eventually. You can order food. So is more now a platform of a community, and you start to belong to this community in a very interesting way. So again, here 8 key characteristic of Millennial. This is in no way this is exhaustive. This is an initial, some tools that we have that we use to design some of the products or ideas that we have, or that reinforce our research within the lab. We have more, but I just wanted to give you a sense of some of the key trends or elements that for us are definitely relevant and are a tool for thoughts, and to start to thinking every time we design products, services, or technologies. Now, while we talk about technologies, I really would like to stress a couple of things about emerging technologies. And I've heard, and we're more and more confronted to at least 2 key technologies: the Internet of Things and artificial intelligence. So I would like just to simply, bring your attention to a couple of things. So Internet of Things, we don't know how many connected objects we will have. Prediction says by 2020 we will have from 25 billion to 212 billion units. Probably we'll have about 26 smart devices or connected devices. So I'm not sure about the number, but certainly we have a very interesting set of connected devices. But it's not only that devices are connected. So, and then they connect to a cloud and start to compute and send data to the cloud and start to compute. So one of the research that actually has been unveiled at the MIT about 6 months ago was ARIS is a chip for basically mobile deep learning. What does it mean is that MIT basic computer chip optimized for deep learning is basically 10 times more efficient than any mobile graphic processor unit. 10 times more efficient than what we have on our mobile. So, which means that non-connected objects, non-connected devices can start to make local computing and can perform local AI, local calculations. So basically devices will send conclusions to the cloud, not data. So objects really start to become smarter and smarter in a way. So a couple of things about the successful Internet of Things. We know that the Internet of Things is based on two strong paradigms. Number one is connectivity, and number two is the exchange of information. That's certainly true, but in a way, we need to add connectivity is not enough. We need to add a layer of communication, layer of tactical knowledge on the information that has been exchanged, a layer of conversation on it. So the fact that two objects are connected doesn't provide any meaningful experience to user at all. But how we expand on that, this is the challenge. So we have at least, let's say three key elements for successful deployment of the Internet of Things. Number one is to work with open platform. That is certainly a key. Number two, to work across industry. Number three is to provide secure transactions. That's, in a way, that's key for us, these three elements. But in order to think successful technologies, I would say the number one is very important to embed these technologies into meaningful social experiences and cultural value. Again, connectivity is not enough, but this needs to be embedded into social experiences and cultural values. So it's not only about optimization and protocols, but it's really about cultural values. And number two, the benefits should be perceived by the end users. So technological advancement are going and growing so fast that we can't perceive the benefits. So I understand the benefits of going from a black and white TV to a color television. And we still understand the benefits of the invention of a remote control that enable you to interact differently with an object. But from now HD, full HD, OLED TV, LCD TV, plasma TV, 4K TV, and then our eyes that cannot make the difference between the next 4K, 6K, 10K TV. So that's for us is important. About artificial intelligence, that is really key right now, and there are a lot of research and discussion and products that are really going on. I would say I have only two. I want to point out two things. Number one, Doug Kitlaus, he basically was leading the Siri group at Apple, and now he created Viv, which is a startup based on voice. And what he's really doing is working on what he called dynamic program generation, which is very interesting. So basically, if you ask Siri, what's the weather today in Boston, you have an answer, today is 60 degrees and it's cloudy. But if you ask, what's the weather 3 days from the day of my anniversary, Siri doesn't know what to answer. So the dynamic program generation basically writes itself a program to answer to your question in real time. So basically, the computer in real time design itself in order to answer to any given question. So between this idea of local computing, where objects are smarter and smarter and start to make local calculation, local computing, and this idea of program generation can be very interesting. And the second point is the conversational commerce, this idea that is what he said is one of the very interesting differentiating factor of the technologies that he's working on, is this idea that the platform basically need to be open, as for the IoT, and welcome third-party integration. That's clear. So, you know, those who utilize Nest thermostat, what is interesting here is Nest is immediately connected to a family of product and services, seamlessly connected. So the moment you buy Nest, you are connected to your car, to your home, to your fan, to your wearable, and so on. So again, is a matter of, you know, what we were observing before, like millennials that are really thinking in terms of relationship rather than products. In that case, you buy a product, and basically you buy a network of products, a networked products that work in a way together. Another interesting product or services that is the Tesla. Patty Mize before me, she mentioned how this Tesla, how cars start to be smarter and smarter. What I think is interesting here, and Tesla is one of the example, is really, you know, you buy a product, you buy a service, and first of all, you can start to upgrade the product. So, you know, you buy the Tesla, and then you can buy the autopilot Tesla version 7.0 for, you know, almost $3,000. You download overnight. So you buy one object, and you keep upgrading the object, like adding functionalities. So this is a living platform that you have. So it's not a finished product. But number two, what is interesting is that, you know, through understanding, you know, what's the difference between manual driving and autopilot driving. So, you know, autopilot really start to have people driving right in the middle of the lane versus manual driving, you have worse performances. But what is really interesting, and bouncing back what Patty Mize was saying is, you know, Tesla, they collect 2.5 million miles of data per day. They compute and then reinject what they learn in the car. So you buy something that is a living entity, basically. And exactly the example that was given, you know, you drive in one way and you know exactly how many accidents are happening in this particular road with this particular temperature and so on, and then the object can respond and talk to you back. So that's one of the key elements. The Tesla is also connected to other devices, of course. You know, this was one of the first experiments of hooking up Tesla with Alexa, and you know, you talk to an appliance, and this is immediately connected to a service or to a product. But what is interesting, I think this was taken a couple of this summer. You know, the fact that you design something, we are not used to see like sleeping driver. So the way you design product, in a way you really need to design it right. So, you know, technologically is done, but we need to be exposed to a better way to engage and design product. We have actually then another point in this is, there is a group here that the group here is called Moral Machine at the Media Lab. But basically, now when you design a service or product like a Tesla, somehow you infer some behavior independently by humans. So we all know the example in a way, you know, what happens if there is a, you know, red light and a child is running behind a ball, so the car has a choice, either like crushing the child or crushing the wall and eventually killing the passenger. So there is a product, and this product can take actionable decisions despite the driver, but someone somehow designed a program or the system before that. So what is happening? Who need to decide? It's only a matter of money and how much you pay for the insurance, or how the civic regulation play in that case. So there is a way complex situation that we are facing. I have a few minutes, and I will jump to conclusions. And I want to maybe point you to a paradigm shift that actually, if we think what happened at the MIT and how research is happening, I would say that in the 90s, we were in the digital period. Let me call it this way. So digital means basically inspiring book from Nicholas Negroponte, who founded 30 years ago the media. 95 was Being Digital. Inspiring book from Bill Mitchell. He wrote, in my opinion, the first book addressing smart cities. City of Bits, 1995. Was also the first book put online by MIT Press. And a lot of the invention that happened during the 90s and research that we used to do over the 90s here then are very well known and diffuse technologies today. Second period, year 2000, a lot of the things that you see, we enter into the physical world. So a lot of the research that and product that we have today about wearable computing, nearables, Google glasses, IoT, etc., happened back then, and now we have all wearables and so on. So the research is very much present. So where we're going next and what's happening right now, and I think very relevant to me, is this notion of biological phase. A lot of the research that are happening today in that area will really have a tremendous impact shortly. So, a couple of things or products. Number one is, technologically speaking, we used to interact with mainframe computers, so human entering in large rooms and interact with computational data. Then progressively, those machines start to travel to our room, our desktop. Then portable computer traveled with us. Then started to enter in our pockets and so on. And now, digital tattoos are basically very interesting technology. So the technology is really starting to invade and come closer to our bodies. So through digital tattoo, you can monitor baby temperature, heart rate. You can really create a new interaction between human body and the external world. Second point, molecular medicine. Again, the idea is that healthcare was once mainly depending on killing germs. Now is about fine-tuning people at a very different level. So we are from killing germs to fine-tuning people in a very interesting and new way. Hiroshi Ishii, one of the very interesting professor here at the Media Lab, Hiroshi Ishii, designed like a T-shirt. You can see where basically he utilized living bacteria to design a shirt. So living bacteria that expand to humidity. So if you have a T-shirt and you are engaged in sports or into an activity and you start to transpire, living bacteria separate, create holes in the product, and favor transpiration and air circulation. So basically, you start to design living bacteria at the product level in a very interesting way. This is only one of the idea of one of the things that is happening. And one last example is uBiome. Basically, we all have 2 to 6 pounds of microbes that are living inside of us. So this basically ecosystem of trillions of microbes is known as microbiome. Basically, we contain living bacteria and microorganisms that are both beneficial and detrimental to our body. What's happened is that we can do advanced testing in a way. For example, you have a smart gut test that for a very irrelevant, I would say, price, you can do tests on your and the bacteria in your body, and you can start to customize products based on that. It can be a large scale. For example, the water that we drink in smart cities, are there better neighborhoods that have a different impact in people's lives or people's guts? to products. You want to engage into financial services, and you can measure the level of stress not only really at the biological level, not only and the biochemical and bacterial level, and how this impacts the choices and the customized product that we can deliver. So again, these are very interesting elements. This is a growing trend, and we see those impacts in products in a very near future. So I will stop here. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Federico. Many questions, and one is a clear winner. And I guess it's, are we or are you stereotyping millennials? And the older ones are starting family, and their behaviors are starting to diverge. Is the throughput or the next group that's coming, are they acting differently, the ones that were born in 2005?
Well, definitely, this is the right word, like stereotyping. I mean, we need to create some context, or we need to frame our questions. And the 8 key points for us are stereotype. This is for our tools to understand the word and the context. And then, of course, there are subgroups. There are different categories. Those categories are very different than in the past. That is also an evidence. So the categories are based on other elements that, for example, they are not geographically situated. Of course, through global connectivity, you can have similar trends really across the world. They're culturally situated. They're defined in a very different way.
The next question I find difficult. Forbes says one thing, and a previous presenter said that brand power is being depleted. How do you see that contradiction, or is there no contradiction?
Well, I don't know, actually. We haven't found this loyalty, or I don't know for the length of the loyalty. So let's say, again, back to previous generations, my grandma, she still have the same kitchen she bought 40 years ago. So should I say that this was a loyalty to a manufacturer? And then are you loyalty to a brand like to IKEA if you keep changing buying products, or your loyalty but time-based? The famous joke that people who smoke say, I stop smoking every night, but I start again in the morning. So I don't know the loyalty span in that case.
Yeah, my grandfather only bought Fords.
Yeah, that's.
Next question, what kind of aspects we need to
Loyalty.
consider to have a powerful loyalty program for the millennials?
That's also another great question. So for us, again, loyalty is non-transactional. So we have done a lot of work in the hospitality industry with hotels. Non-transactional is, brands tend to say, with Marriott hotels, you buy, 3 stay with us and you receive X number of points. This is, a mechanical, linear, mathematical equation. You buy this, I give you that. This is no longer working, but the conversation that needs to happen is definitely one, is no longer a way transactional. And 2, the work that we started to do with Marriott hotels was, if you sell services, and these services has a purpose or a meaning. So it's not only I give you some sort of rewards for your action, but if you stay in our hotel in Kendall Square, we also take part actively in the life of Kendall Square, and we have more trees and services. So we design a better community. This is definitely more valuable. So engaging through purpose, this is a great way to extend loyalty with consumer, which is actually what happens. So a lot of the people we have been talking to is really happy to spend even more money to acquire or to have access to product and services that have a meaning, and they know how they're built and what they're doing.
Next question about, of the 8 characteristics, which one do you think should be more exploited?
Well, definitely today, especially thinking how digital media works and how we're trying to engage with new media. First of all, really shifting from transaction to conversation is a very important point. So is a constant engagement, is a conversation that allows to provide product and services that can be personalized step by step, and they can change and evolve. So that's not only because we start to design conversational bots, for example, that utilize artificial intelligence. So basically, they are somehow replacing existing app, but from a variety of services. I think that this is key and can be definitely valuable.
Next question is interesting, given the globalization, millennials in the U.S., Europe versus millennials in economic emerging countries. I know you've done work in Brazil. Could you do some contrasting?
Well, we have done, the results that I presented was basically issued from an observatory we have established, where we have an ethnographer or a curious researcher doing video ethnography and talking to people across the world. So we have been talking to people in the US, but actually we're trying to focus on emerging location. We have done a lot of work in Detroit, for example, or not only in Boston or the two East Coasts that are very stereotypical. We have done a lot of work in Europe. We've been doing a lot of work in Brazil, in China. In Brazil, we spend a lot of time in talking to millennials, favelas. So it's, for us, it's not a scientific validation, but it's definitely a set of trends and tools that really help us and guide through potential products and services.
And you see a lot of similarities across
absolutely.
geographies.
Yep.
Not all millennials are the same. What characteristics can help subsegments within millennial? Any research?
Well, we haven't done this type of research specifically. We really, and one of the questions was definitely relevant. So millennials go from 18, 20 years old with no family to a 30-plus-year-old that start to grow a family. So there is a very large differentiation. But in one way, we all start to utilize the same similar product and service and start to have similar expectations. So even non-millennials that have some inclination to use a service, I was making the example of Uber. You call it taxi. So it's so easy. You just press a button. You don't need to pay. You don't need to worry. You just need to say, where do you want to go? Why, when I need to pay a fine, when I need to engage with my government, when I need to call a service center for my appliances, I don't have the same seamless experience. So again, these values start to transition into all the different aspects of our life and existence.
I think there's one last question. Who's doing? Mike? Mike? Lawson? Yes. No more. Oh, yes.
No?
Who are the biggest losers? Millennials use Uber, Amazon, and also work for those companies, sometimes for low salaries and uncomfortable work environments.
Yep. Well, we were stating, I mean, the fact that we were saying, for example, access over ownership is definitely happening, doesn't mean that it happens because you have enough money to buy products and you don't want to do it. So sometimes, low salaries and difficult economical situation drive also behavior. Airbnb is one of the clear examples. So Airbnb has not been created for any idealistic model, but because of the super high rent in San Francisco, and they need to make money out of spare room. So actual needs from challenging situation design projects and solutions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.